Have you ever walked into a room, hoping for a smile, or even just a glance from your child, only to be met with silence or indifference? It's a subtle kind of pain, one that builds over time, not with harsh words or loud arguments, but with neglect. The kind of neglect that whispers, "You don't matter here anymore." For many parents, this isn't just a passing phase. It becomes a pattern. You gave your love, your time, your energy, and now it feels like you're invisible in your own home. They don't listen, they don't look up, and sometimes they don't even seem to care that you're trying. But here's the twist most people never talk about. The more you try to chase respect, the further it runs. The louder you raise your voice, the less they hear. And the more you beg to be seen, the easier you are to overlook. This video is not about blaming them or blaming yourself. It's about waking up. It's about using Stoic philosophy to pull yourself out of this emotional trap, not through anger or guilt, but through clarity and quiet strength. Today, I'll walk you through a different path, one where you stop reacting and start leading with dignity, one where silence becomes your ally, presence becomes your power, and boundaries become your new language of love. You'll learn how to shift the entire dynamic between you and your child, without drama, without shouting, and without ever having to say, "You owe me." Respect that is earned quietly lasts longer than anything demanded out loud. And before we finish, I'll share one mindset shift that can completely reshape how your children see you, perhaps for the first time in years. My name is Marcus Vale, and if you've ever felt dismissed by those you once held in your arms, this message was made for you. Don't skip. Don't scroll. What comes next might be the most important conversation you've had in a long time. Letting go of emotional dependence. The heartache isn't just in being ignored. It's in the silent hope that one day they'll come around. That maybe tomorrow they'll finally see your worth, call you first, speak to you with warmth. But that hope, quiet as it seems, is what's been quietly draining you. It's time we turn the page on that illusion. Because true self-respect isn't just about no longer asking for attention. It's about breaking free from the emotional grip that has tied your peace to their behavior. You're not just hurt by their coldness. What's really pulling you down is how much power you've given their actions to shape your emotional world. You see, emotional dependence doesn't always announce itself loudly. It hides in the little things, the way your heart leaps at a notification that never comes, or how your mood dips when they cancel plans, speak bluntly, or forget to include you. Slowly, your well-being becomes tethered to their inconsistency. And that's not love. That's quiet captivity. The Stoics warned us long ago, what we can't control, we shouldn't suffer over. And yet, here we are, suffering not because of what they did, but because of what we keep hoping they'll do differently. You're measuring your worth through the lens of someone else's limitations. But here's the truth you may not want to admit. They may never change. They may never call more. They may never speak softer. And even if they do, should your inner peace really hinge on their ability to show up the way you want? This next stage in your journey isn't about becoming distant or bitter. It's about reclaiming ownership of your emotional life. It's about finding stability in your own presence, not theirs. Because when you free yourself from needing their validation, you begin to rediscover your own power. No one should hold the key to your peace of mind except you. And once you take that key back, you'll find something even greater than attention. You'll find freedom, silence, and strategy. In today's world, people rush to respond to everything. Silence feels foreign, almost threatening. We've been conditioned to believe that if we don't speak up immediately, if we don't react, we lose relevance. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that silence isn't weakness. It's power held in reserve. When someone treats you with coldness or indifference, the natural instinct is to push back, to explain, to justify, to make yourself seen. But what if doing nothing was the most powerful move you could make? You see, silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. It's a choice to remain centered when others try to provoke you into emotional chaos. And in the face of indifference, silence sends a message louder than any argument ever could. You don't control me. Let's be clear, there's nothing dignified about begging for recognition. When you run after someone who's turned away from you, you're handing over your self-worth like spare change. But when you choose stillness over reaction, restraint over desperation, you begin to shift the power dynamic without saying a word. This is how presence becomes your greatest weapon. When you hold your space with quiet strength, people notice. Not because you're shouting, but because you're no longer chasing. The mind is wired to overlook what is always available and to obsess over what withdraws. When you step back, not out of spite, but with self-respect, you become scarce. And what is scarce becomes valuable. Imagine a ruler surrounded by constant flattery. They expect loyalty, obedience, and attention. But one day, someone quietly leaves the room. No farewell, no fuss, just gone. That absence speaks louder than any rebellion. It unsettles the powerful. Why did they stop showing up? What changed? Suddenly, the one who needed attention is now receiving it. Not because they demanded it, but because they detached. But here's the catch. This kind of detachment must be genuine. If you withdraw on the outside but remain desperate on the inside, people will sense it. The illusion of calm can only last so long if your mind is still chained to their approval. True strategy starts within. It's about reaching a point where your peace no longer depends on a message, a visit, or an apology. So take this in, not to hurt anyone, not to play a game, but to finally let go of the emotional chaos that's been dictating your state of mind. When you stop needing their attention, you free up space to reconnect with your own value. If these words resonate with you, if they stir something in your spirit, then take a quiet moment to commit to the path of still strength. This isn't just a message, it's a turning point. A decision to stop dancing for validation and start walking in your own authority. And if you're still here, stay with me until the end. What I'll share next is perhaps the most important lesson of all: how to release yourself from the one chain that's heavier than silence, heavier than indifference: guilt. Breaking free from the guilt that holds you back. There's a whisper that lives inside many parents, a quiet but persistent voice that questions every decision, replays every moment, and plants doubt where there should be peace. Did I fail them? Was I too strict? Not loving enough? Did I cause this distance between us? This voice doesn't scream, but it weighs heavily, turning memories into self-punishment. That voice is guilt. And guilt is clever. It wears masks: duty, love, humility. But in truth, it's a subtle form of bondage. It convinces you that suffering is proof of your goodness, that the more pain you carry, the more noble your parenting must have been. But this is a lie so many have internalized. From childhood, we're taught that real parents give endlessly, expect nothing, endure everything. And so, we stretch ourselves thin, we excuse disrespect, we remain silent in the face of emotional neglect, Not because we're weak, but because we've been told it's what good parents do. That enduring pain is part of the deal. But here's the truth. Guilt doesn't make you noble. It makes you easy to manipulate. And whether they intend it or not, your children, now adults, can use that guilt like a lever. A sigh, a story retold through blame, a subtle jab at your past. And suddenly you're apologizing for years that no longer exist. You give in. Again and again. Guilt hands over your self-respect, one piece at a time. And whoever owns that guilt owns the emotional terrain of your life. As long as you cling to it, you'll stay small. You'll stay quiet. You'll keep justifying behavior you'd never accept from anyone else. But listen carefully. There is no such thing as a flawless parent. Not in any home, not in any time. You did the best you could with what you had, in the moment you were in. That's not failure. That's humanity. And if your children have grown into adults who cannot see that, if they hold you hostage to moments you cannot rewrite, then the wound is no longer yours to carry. It's theirs. Seneca once said we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Nowhere is that more true than in guilt. Because guilt doesn't reflect what's happening. It reflects what you fear might have happened. But life is not lived backward, and dragging your past behind you only blinds you to the peace still ahead. Ask yourself honestly, were you perfect? Of course not. Did you try? Probably more than they'll ever know. Do you have the right to let go of guilt and live the rest of your life with dignity? Without question, guilt is not love. Guilt is not duty. Guilt is an anchor disguised as loyalty. And the only way to reclaim your strength is to unhook it completely. Walk forward without it. Let it fall away like an old coat you no longer need. Not to erase the past, but to stop letting it control the present. Because if you don't, you'll keep explaining yourself to people who stopped listening long ago. You'll keep feeling wrong for setting boundaries. And worst of all, you'll keep betraying yourself in the name of peace. But real peace doesn't come from pleasing others. It comes from forgiving yourself. And once you do, you'll discover the next lesson waiting quietly on the horizon. The power of saying no, not out of anger, but from the deepest place of inner freedom. Learning to say no without fear. If you find yourself constantly saying yes out of fear of losing whatever little attention or connection they offer, then you're not truly free. You may call it love, or loyalty, or sacrifice, but what you're actually doing is trading your self-respect for temporary peace. And as long as that pattern continues, the freedom you're looking for will never arrive. This brings us to something few are ever taught, and even fewer dare to practice: the courage to say no, and mean it. For years, you've stretched yourself thin. You've agreed to things that drained you, just to keep the connection alive. You've opened your wallet, your schedule, and your heart, often when you didn't want to, and sometimes when you couldn't afford to. You've babysat grandkids on aching knees. You've picked up the phone, knowing it was only for another request. Not a check-in, not a thank you. You did it all hoping, just maybe, your sacrifices would earn you closeness, or even just respect. But here you are, tired and overlooked. And now, it's painfully clear. What you've built isn't closeness. It's a system of quiet dependency, where you give and they take. And the cycle continues. Every time you say yes out of fear of rejection, fear of being labeled selfish, you reinforce the idea that your time, energy, and peace are negotiable. You condition them to believe that your boundaries are soft, that your love comes without limits, even when it costs you your well-being. But real love isn't about endless self-sacrifice. Real love has structure. It has shape. And without boundaries, love turns into servitude. Not because they intended it, but because you allowed it. Here's what needs to shift. Stop thinking of no as rejection. Start seeing it as respect for yourself. A parent who never sets limits isn't being loving. They're forgetting that they too deserve care. Marcus Aurelius once reminded us that strength isn't found in endurance alone. It's found in discernment, in knowing what to carry and what to put down. So ask yourself, how many times have you swallowed your truth to avoid tension? How many times have you nodded when everything inside screamed enough? That is not peace. That is erasure. And the longer it continues, the more invisible you become in your own life. But here's what change could look like. The next time they ask for something that feels like too much, you answer without apology. No, not today. No story, no drama, just a calm refusal. It might shock them. It might make them push harder. But if you stand your ground, a subtle shift begins. They'll see someone who knows their value, someone who doesn't need to overextend just to be loved. And that's where real respect begins. Will it feel uncomfortable? Yes. Like any unused muscle, the first time is shaky. But every time you say no from a place of self-respect, you reclaim a part of yourself, your clarity, your authority, your voice. And eventually, they'll see they can no longer manipulate you with guilt or expect you to bend just because they asked. Because here's the truth. Respect is never something you request. It's something you radiate. And emotional independence isn't a gift someone gives you. It's something you decide to build, one boundary at a time. Saying no doesn't mean shutting people out. It means honoring what matters. Your time, your peace, your worth. And once you begin to see your own value clearly, others will be forced to do the same. That's not rebellion. That's wisdom. Stop acting like they're the center of your life. This is where the real transformation begins. It's one thing to set boundaries. It's another to stop revolving around people who treat you as if you're optional. If you truly want to reclaim your self-respect, it's not enough to say no. You must also stop placing them at the center of your emotional universe. Because the truth is, nothing captures attention more powerfully than peace. Not arguments, not chasing, not complaints, but calm detachment. When someone realizes you no longer need their approval, something shifts. And if they're ever going to see you differently, it won't be because you begged. It'll be because you stopped waiting. That brings us to one of the most difficult but liberating shifts you can make. Letting go of that last flicker of hope. The one that quietly whispers maybe one day they'll change. The part of you that still imagines a message, a visit, a sudden realization of how much you've done and how much you matter. But that hope is a chain, a quiet one, a chain that keeps you suspended in a life on hold. Take a moment. Really think about your day. From morning to night, how much of your time is unconsciously influenced by them? Do you scroll through your phone hoping their name appears? Do you hesitate to make plans, just in case they reach out? Do you go to sleep with a heaviness in your chest, wondering if they even noticed your silence? And in the meantime, life passes. Your life. While you wait for someone else to make space for you in theirs. If your sense of purpose is tied to their presence, you'll always be in limbo. Because people rarely cherish what's constantly available, especially when that availability is fueled by longing, not joy. The moment you begin building a life that's not shaped by their choices is the moment you begin to matter, not just to them, but to yourself. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about redirecting your energy towards something more solid. Your passions, your growth, your peace. It's about filling your life with enough meaning that you no longer need theirs to feel valid. When you stop orbiting around them and begin to shine on your own path, the dynamic changes. They may not notice right away. In fact, at first, they might not care. But eventually, when your presence is no longer a given, when your attention is no longer a guarantee, curiosity creeps in. What changed? Where did they go? Why do they seem stronger? That's when people begin to reconsider. But by then, you won't be waiting for their validation. You'll be too busy living. This is what emotional freedom looks like. Not in separation for the sake of pride, but in a quiet, confident return to yourself. Because when you stop acting like someone else is the center of your world, you finally give yourself permission to become the center of your own. The silent revenge of success. Picture two people. One has made their life into a waiting room, sitting in the same chair, surrounded by old photos, replaying memories while hoping for a call that never comes. They exist in the past, hoping others will remember them. The other? They've moved forward. They wake each day with purpose. They engage in meaningful work. They build new connections, not because they've forgotten, but because they've chosen not to disappear. This contrast isn't about luck. It's about mindset. One waits for life to happen. The other builds it. And here's what most people miss. The greatest way to be remembered by those who have forgotten you isn't through guilt or pleas. It's through progress. When you stop living in the shadows of someone else's approval and begin to thrive, you send a message far more powerful than words. I never needed you to become whole. You may think they'll notice your absence just because you've stepped back. They won't. People don't notice silence unless it echoes. And the only way to make that silence resonate is to fill it with growth. Physical, emotional, spiritual. No tantrums, no bitterness, just movement. That's the quiet kind of power people remember. Think of someone you once overlooked until they outgrew the version you kept in your mind. That absence didn't hurt because they vanished. It hurt because they changed, and you didn't get to witness it. That's your blueprint. Not revenge driven by ego, but self-respect lived in full view. Not emotional detachment out of pride, but presence directed inward, where it belongs. So ask yourself, are you truly ready to let your life speak louder than your silence? Or are you going to finish this message and drift back into old habits, checking your phone, reliving old wounds, waiting for apologies that may never come? Because the hard truth is this: nothing you've heard matters unless you act. The world only begins to treat you differently once you start treating yourself like someone who matters. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And in your case, the best answer to their indifference is a life so full they can't ignore it. That's when the power shifts. That's when you stop needing them, and they start wondering if they ever really knew you at all. Time will put everything in its place. In the end, the life you live comes down to one thing: choice. You can choose to stand still, holding on to hope that they'll wake up, come back, or finally realize what you meant to them. You can spend your days believing that time owes you justice, that karma will one day nudge them back towards you, full of regret and apologies. But time doesn't work that way. Life moves forward, with or without recognition, with or without closure. There are no promises that the people who overlooked you will ever see clearly. Some remain blind forever. And the longer you wait for someone else's awakening, the more of your own life you quietly surrender. Here's the question that matters now. What are you going to do with the time that's left? Because time doesn't pause for pain. It doesn't halt so you can grieve in peace or wait for clarity. It marches on, and every moment you spend tethered to their silence is a moment that could have belonged to your healing, your growth, your joy. You may not realize it until years have passed, but the waiting carves deep grooves into your spirit. One day, you'll glance back and see all the doors life had opened behind you, while you stood frozen, staring at one that never reopened. That's why the shift must begin now, not tomorrow, not after another unanswered message. Today, take back your mornings. Reclaim your afternoons. Spend your nights building something that has nothing to do with them. Begin projects that excite you. Connect with people who do show up. Laugh, not because you've forgotten, but because you remember what it feels like to be alive for yourself. Because each time you put your life on pause to see if they'll notice, you give away more of the power you promised you were reclaiming. But don't confuse this with a temporary burst of motivation. This isn't about distracting yourself for a few days, only to collapse back into nostalgia the next time you feel alone. This is a long-term contract with yourself, a quiet vow to choose dignity over delay, progress over longing. You will need strength, more than you think, because it's not easy to stop waiting. It takes courage to admit that some apologies will never come, and that some people will never meet you where you are. But if you're serious about peace, then you must act like someone who deserves it. Not someday, now. Time will do what it always does. It will move. And in that movement, it may reveal truths to others that they couldn't see before. They may one day look around and notice your absence, your glow, your resilience. But by then, you won't be sitting in the same place. You won't be waiting. You'll be living. And if they return, let it not be to the version of you that waited, but to the one who moved forward and no longer needs them to feel whole. Because this is the final choice. Will you spend your life hoping others change? Or will you change the way you live, starting now? Time is moving, and it will put everything in its place. But you decide whether you stay stuck or become someone worth remembering. Change doesn't begin with motivation. It begins with resistance, and most of it comes from inside you. The excuses you've believed for years feel real, but they're just chains dressed as logic. You're not too old. It's not too late. The life you want isn't gone. It's waiting for you to stop postponing it. Loneliness isn't punishment. It's power. And your limitations? They only define you if you let them. This isn't about waiting for the perfect moment. It's about choosing to act even when things aren't perfect. That's how real change begins. I'm Marcus Vale, and if this message reached you, it's because you're ready to stop waiting and start living. Thank you for watching. If this message spoke to you, leave a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to join this growing community of inner strength and Stoic wisdom.